Developed intense feelings for a coworker and can't shake them, leading me to question my loyalty and control over my heart. I've been with my wonderful husband since we were 20 and 21. Our relationship has always been amazing. Somehow, we still find time for dates every week, and genuinely enjoy each other's company. From the very beginning, back in high school, he became my best friend, and honestly, that's still true today. Yes, I have a girlfriend I call my best friend. She is my best friend outside of my marriage, but nothing compares to the bond I share with my husband. Sure, we've had our rough patches, but nothing too severe. There are flaws on both sides, things I need to change about myself, and things he needs to work on. That's just part of being human, and I know neither of us will ever be perfect. We don't have kids, nor are kids part of our plan. We're both pretty successful in our careers, though we've each hit bumps of unemployment here and there. No matter who is working or earning more, there's never been hostility about finances. We've always supported each other. Together, we've survived depression, alcoholism, and even some medical stuff, and always showed up for each other. We really are a kick-ass team. Our sex life? It's still really great, and really active. For us, a dry spell is making it through a work week without having sex, simply because we're exhausted, but even that's rare. Our families get along well, too. My family treats him like another son or brother. He's everything I ever hoped for in a husband, and I love him, truly. Still, as much as I love my husband, I've noticed that from time to time I'm attracted to others. I'm sure he's felt similarly, but it's not anything we actually talk about. I know it's normal, it's never been intense before, and when I do notice feelings for someone, they're never hard to shake off. At least, that's how it used to be. This time, it's different. I'm struggling with feelings that are so intense, I almost don't know what to do. There's this coworker, he's attractive, friendly, just fun to be around. We started at the company around the same time about 8 months ago, and we're stuck in training together for a couple of weeks. That was torture, my feelings hit fast and hard. I just know I blushed every time he gave me that smile. It would be embarrassing enough if I were single, given we work together, but being married, it feels like it reflects especially poorly on me. We're not technically working together now, but our departments are close. When he passes through my area, he'll rest his hand on my shoulder and give it a squeeze to get my attention, flash me that smile, and keep moving. We make small talk if we cross paths or see each other at work events, but honestly, I do that with everyone. We've never exchanged numbers, aren't friends on social media, and don't spend time outside work together. He and a few others have invited me to the bar after work, but I always turn them down. I work in a male-dominated field, and the idea of being the only woman out with a group of guys leaves me uncomfortable, especially when one of them is this guy I have feelings for. I avoid his floor if I can. If I see him on lunch, I give a quick hello, then take my break elsewhere, sometimes outside, just to avoid too much interaction. I do everything I can to not think about him, try to remind myself how ridiculous I'm being, but still, I can't shake these feelings. I'm not afraid I'm going to do something stupid. I don't believe in making excuses for one-time mistakes. I'm completely in control of my actions, and there's no way I could ever be that cruel to my husband. But, for the life of me, I can't figure out how to dissolve these feelings or just get past them. Honestly, the last time I felt this kind of overwhelming pull for someone was with my husband. We bonded quickly then, too, friends first, spending time together, eventually getting more physical and then serious after about a year. I was young, and none of my relationships before him were all that deep or meaningful. I just never thought I'd feel this way about anyone else. It's not that I'm comparing my husband to this coworker, there's no contest there, and that's not what this is about. It's just, with others, I was always able to shake off any feelings that cropped up. This time, though, it's unshakable. Sometimes weeks go by where I don't see him and he doesn't cross my mind at all, but then I'll spot him walking into work, and my heart speeds up, just like it did back in high school when I had crushes. Now, instead of daydreaming in class, I catch myself struggling to stay focused at work. Despite all the advice out there about transparency, I know this isn't something I'll ever bring up with my husband. These feelings aren't about neglect or anything lacking in our relationship. I don't feel like I'm missing out, and there's nothing my husband could do differently to change any of this. If the roles were reversed and he felt like this about someone else, I honestly wouldn't want him to tell me, unless I was somehow to blame, unless he felt pushed away by me. Otherwise, I know how much it would hurt and how pointless it would be, especially when there's zero chance I'd cross any lines or let this become more than a distracting crush. I just want these feelings to go away, for things at work to get back to normal, for my heart to stop betraying me every time I catch a glimpse of this guy. There isn't a problem in my marriage, and I'm certainly not going to create one when, really, I'm just dealing with something inside myself. Update 1. Before I get into the update, there's something I need to clarify that I might have explained badly before. My job isn't the kind of male-dominated place where there's 300 employees and only 4 women. It's actually closer to 25% to 30% women, and the rest men. We give each other a hard time and goof around, everyone with everyone, not just the guys teasing the women. Honestly, the only coworkers who've ever messed with my hair as they passed by have been other women, and it's nothing I haven't done with my own sisters. With the guys, the most physical touch I've exchanged is a pat on the back after a tough close, a handshake, maybe a pat on the shoulder if I need to get someone's attention while walking by, and I did hug one guy when he retired, but his wife was there for the party. So, it's a laid-back environment, but it's not HR's worst nightmare either. Still, I realized I needed to find some distance between myself and this one coworker, especially after I started noticing how something as simple as eye contact with him made me react, and not in a way I wanted. I'm friends with my husband's boss's wife, and I decided to give her a call to help arrange some time off for him. His employer is really chill about time off, so I just set it up so they'd expect him to call out. I surprised him with a romantic extended weekend getaway. It was exactly what we needed. That break really reminded me to appreciate him and our relationship in ways I'd been neglecting, and I'm grateful I did it. If I hadn't followed that instinct to focus more on us, I don't know if I'd have gotten this clarity. As soon as I got back, though, everything seemed to speed up. I found out that the coworker, let's just call him Coworker, had applied for a transfer into my department, and soon after, he was added to my team. Fine. I'm a grown woman. I can handle this. Plus, the time away had given me a lot of clarity about my priorities. But then things took a turn for the weird. Out of nowhere, Coworker started bringing me coffee whenever he picked some up for himself, but not for anyone else whose workload had also increased. There were about 4 of us who took on new clients, so it wasn't just me hustling. We started having lunch at the same time more often. I noticed friend requests and follow notifications from him on social media, all declined. I felt like he was standing just a hair too close for comfort, which made me question whether I was just reading too much into things. It was all a little confusing. The truth is, I felt this pull toward him, a kind of connection that made no sense and was absolutely unwanted. I desperately wanted it to end. I usually park by the smoking section because, let's be real, I have a filthy habit and like to be close to my cigarettes. Tonight, while I was heading out to my car, he caught up with me and asked to bum a smoke. We talked for a couple of minutes, just small talk, until he said he had something uncomfortable to share. That's when he told me, he's been attracted to me since we met, but working closer together had made his feelings stronger. He admitted he knows I'm married and promised to respect any boundaries I set, but he said he couldn't live with the what-ifs if he didn't tell me. Then he dropped the bombshell that he broke up with his girlfriend and moved back in with his parents while he finds a new place. According to him, he could feel there was something between us and didn't think it was just one-sided. I was stunned. I told him plainly that I'm very happily married, and that he was misreading my friendliness as something more. I told him bluntly to learn what boundaries with coworkers are supposed to look like, and to keep his distance. Unless it was strictly work, I didn't want to talk to him. We were coworkers, not friends. Then I left. He looked defeated and apologized for overstepping, but the conversation left me rattled. My husband was out of town for work, so I had to come home to an empty house, stuck with the strangest mix of emotions I've felt since this whole thing began. There's something so bizarre about how powerful this pull is, and I can't help but agree with the idea that something is off with our pheromones or chemistry. The way he spoke, like he'd be okay if I cheated on my husband with him, made me see him in a totally different light. He no longer seemed like a charming guy, he felt more like the type who's never heard no before. Sleep doesn't come easily when I'm alone, and after everything that happened, I was exhausted and needed to get all of this out while it was still fresh. I won't lie, he's still attractive to me, but I'm just not attracted to him as a person anymore. When my husband gets home, I plan to tell him everything about these run-ins, but I'm leaving out the small, fleeting feelings I had, because they simply don't matter at this point. Today, I didn't even go into work. Instead, I got an email from Coworker. It started with what sounded like a sincere apology but quickly slid into an invitation to dinner to make it up to me. I replied, telling him that his advances made me very uncomfortable, and reiterating that I'm not interested in seeing him outside of work. His second email was another apology, but he made sure to keep the invitation open for dinner as friends to make it up to me. I haven't responded and he hasn't reached out again today. Right now, I'm in a weird place, more repulsed by Coworker than ever, but those weird primal feelings still linger somewhere in the background. I can't wait for my husband to get home. We're planning a cozy night together with dinner and Netflix. And as soon as there's a departmental transfer available, I'll be the first to sign up. Update 2. My husband came home Thursday night, and I told him everything. Well, almost everything. I explained about Coworker's confession, the emails, how uncomfortable it all made me. He was incredibly supportive, even a little protective in that sweet way he gets. We had our cozy night in, and honestly, it felt like a huge weight off my shoulders. He suggested I document everything and maybe talk to HR if Coworker keeps pushing boundaries. I felt so much better having it out in the open. Friday morning, I went back to work feeling confident and ready to handle whatever came next. Coworker wasn't at his desk when I arrived, which was a relief. I thought maybe he'd finally gotten the message. I was wrong. Around 10 a.m., my manager called me into her office. Apparently, Coworker had gone to HR first thing that morning with a complaint about me. He claimed I'd been leading him on with flirtatious behavior, then turned hostile when he tried to address it professionally. He said I'd been inappropriate with him, touching his shoulder, seeking him out for private conversations, and that when he tried to set boundaries, I became aggressive and threatened his job. I sat there in complete shock as my manager read through his statement. He'd twisted every single interaction we'd had. That hand on my shoulder? According to him, I was the one initiating physical contact. The coffee he brought me? He claimed I'd specifically asked him to bring it, then got upset when he tried to stop because it was making other coworkers uncomfortable. The worst part? He'd somehow made it sound like I was the married woman pursuing him, and he was the innocent victim trying to do the right thing. My manager seemed skeptical of his story, especially since she's worked with me for 8 months without any issues. But she had to follow protocol. I'm now under a formal investigation while they interview other coworkers and review any relevant communications. I forwarded them his emails immediately, the ones where he kept asking me to dinner even after I said no. But he'd been clever about his wording. To someone who didn't know the context, they could almost read like a colleague trying to apologize for a misunderstanding. The really sick thing? I think he planned this. I think he knew I'd reject him, and this was his backup plan. Either get what he wanted, or make sure I paid for saying no. I called my husband from my car during lunch, crying. He was furious, not at me, but at the whole situation. He wanted to march into my office and confront Coworker himself, but I begged him not to. The last thing I need is this escalating further. Now I'm sitting at home, probably facing a disciplinary hearing next week. I keep replaying every interaction, wondering if I somehow encouraged this nightmare. My husband keeps reminding me that this isn't my fault, that having a work crush doesn't make me responsible for another person's manipulative behavior. But I can't help thinking, if I'd just been stronger, if I'd never let myself develop feelings in the first place, maybe none of this would be happening. Those stupid butterflies might cost me my career. The irony isn't lost on me. I spent months trying to get rid of these feelings for him, and now they're completely gone, replaced by something much closer to fear. Update 3. The disciplinary hearing was supposed to be routine. 3 days of interviews, a review of the evidence, and then a decision. I thought the worst that could happen was a written warning or maybe a transfer. I was so naive. The hearing started predictably enough. My manager, Sarah, was there along with someone from HR and a union representative I'd never met. Coworker had his own rep. The atmosphere was tense but professional. They went through his complaints point by point, and I methodically refuted each one. The emails helped, especially the dinner invitations that came after I'd explicitly told him to keep his distance. But then Coworker's rep dropped something that made my stomach fall through the floor. They had security footage. The footage showed our conversation by the smoking section, the night he confessed his feelings. But here's the thing about security cameras, they don't capture audio, and they don't capture context. What it showed was me and Coworker talking for several minutes, appearing relaxed and friendly. It showed him reaching out and briefly touching my arm while we talked. It showed me not pulling away immediately. Without the audio, without knowing what was actually being said, it looked like exactly what he'd claimed, a casual, friendly conversation between colleagues that I later reframed as harassment. The HR representative asked me to explain what I was seeing. I told him the truth, that he was confessing his attraction to me, and I was too shocked to react properly at first. But I could see the doubt creeping into their faces. Why would I stand there so calmly if I was truly uncomfortable? Why didn't I walk away immediately? Then came the real gut punch. Coworker's rep presented testimony from 3 other employees who claimed they'd witnessed me being unusually friendly with him over the past few months. One said she'd seen me seeking him out during breaks. Another claimed I'd been touchy with him during team meetings. A third said I'd seemed flustered around him in ways that suggested mutual attraction. The worst part? None of it was technically untrue. I had sought him out, to avoid him later by figuring out his schedule. I had been flustered around him. I probably had been more physically casual than I should have been, the same way I am with everyone in our relaxed office environment. But presented without context, filtered through the lens of his narrative, every innocent interaction became evidence of my supposed pursuit of him. The hearing was postponed pending further investigation. I was suspended with pay while they reviewed all available evidence. Walking out of that conference room felt like a death march. That night, I sat in my kitchen staring at my laptop, drafting my resignation letter. My husband found me there at 2 a.m., crying over the keyboard. "Don't you dare," he said, reading over my shoulder. "Don't you dare let him win." But it wasn't about winning anymore. It was about survival. Even if I was cleared of wrongdoing, how could I continue working there? Everyone would know about the investigation. The rumors were probably already spreading. My husband sat down across from me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, a cold, calculating anger. "There's something I haven't told you," he said quietly. "I did some digging into your coworker after you first mentioned him. Called in a favor with a buddy who works in background checks." I stared at him. "What do you mean, digging?" "His name is Marcus Chen. He's 30, just like you said. But what you don't know is that this isn't his first rodeo. He was let go from his previous job for interpersonal conflicts with female colleagues. Before that, there was a sexual harassment complaint at another company that was settled internally." My blood went cold. "How did you find this out?" "Like I said, I have a contact who runs background checks for hiring managers. Completely above board. And here's the interesting part, in both previous cases, the pattern was the same. He'd show interest in married women, get rejected, then file counter complaints claiming they'd been inappropriate with him. I felt like I was going to be sick. Why didn't you tell me this before?" Because I was hoping he'd just take your rejection and move on. I didn't want to worry you over something that might never escalate. But now. He pushed a manila folder across the table. Now I think your HR department needs to see this. Inside the folder were printed records, not confidential personnel files, but public information, LinkedIn profiles showing his employment gaps, and a newspaper article about a sexual harassment lawsuit at a tech company where he'd worked 3 years ago. The lawsuit had been dropped, but the article mentioned him by name as the counter-plaintiff who'd accused his accuser of harassment. The pattern is clear, my husband continued. He targets married women because he knows they're less likely to report inappropriate behavior. They don't want to complicate their marriages. And when they do reject him, he gets ahead of the story by claiming they were the aggressors. I sat there staring at the evidence in front of me, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks, hope. But there was something else in my husband's expression, something that made me uneasy. There's more, he said. I hired a private investigator to look into his current living situation. You said he moved back in with his parents after breaking up with his girlfriend? I nodded. He lied. He's been living in an apartment complex about 10 minutes from your office. The same complex where 2 other women from your company live. The investigator has photos of him following one of them to her car after work last week. My mouth went dry. Following her? It gets worse. His ex-girlfriend? The one he supposedly just broke up with? They've been broken up for over a year. But she filed a restraining order against him 6 months ago for stalking and harassment. I stared at the folder, then at my husband. How much did this investigation cost? Don't worry about that. How much? He was quiet for a long moment. $1,500. I felt a wave of guilt crash over me. We had that money in savings, but spending it on this felt like such an admission of how badly I'd screwed up. If I'd never developed feelings for Marcus in the first place, we wouldn't be sitting here with a private investigator's report spread across our kitchen table. But my husband reached across and took my hand. This isn't your fault. You had a crush. That's human. What he's doing, this is calculated. This is what he does. The next morning, I walked into my company's HR office with the folder under my arm and my husband by my side. The look on the HR director's face when we laid out the evidence was something I'll never forget. By lunch, Marcus was escorted out of the building by security. By the end of the week, I was cleared of all charges and back at my desk. But the victory felt hollow somehow. My coworkers looked at me differently now. The gossip had spread, just like I'd feared. Even though I'd been vindicated, even though Marcus had been exposed as a serial predator, I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone knew about my feelings for him. Because here's the truth that kept me up at night. The investigation had cleared me of misconduct, but it hadn't erased the fact that I'd been attracted to him. That somewhere in my gut, those primal feelings he'd mentioned were still there, buried under layers of revulsion and fear. And my husband, my wonderful, protective husband who'd spent our savings to save my career, he'd seen that folder too. He'd seen the photos the private investigator had taken of Marcus. Professional headshots for the report, but still. Photos of the man his wife had developed feelings for. We hadn't talked about that part yet. But I could see it in the way he looked at me sometimes, a flicker of something that hadn't been there before. Not anger, exactly, but a new awareness of who I was capable of becoming. The man I'd married knew me as someone who'd never been attracted to anyone but him since we'd been together. Now he knew different. And I wasn't sure either of us knew how to live with that knowledge. Update 4. It's been 6 weeks since Marcus was escorted out, and I thought the worst was behind us. I was wrong. The first sign something was off came 3 weeks ago. My husband started working late more often, which wasn't unusual given his project deadlines, but he'd come home distracted. When I'd ask about his day, he'd give me these short, polite answers that felt more like responses to a roommate than a wife. The easy intimacy we'd always shared felt strained, like we were both trying too hard to act normal. I told myself it was just the aftermath of everything with Marcus. We were both processing, adjusting, but then last Tuesday, I found the business card. I was doing laundry when it fell out of his jeans pocket, a card for a divorce attorney. Not just any attorney, but one of those expensive ones downtown with the glossy website and the billboards. My hands actually shook holding it. When he got home, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the card placed in front of his usual spot. He saw it immediately and just stopped in the doorway. "We need to talk," I said. He sat down heavily, not looking at me. "I was going to tell you." "Were you?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Because it seems like you were doing research behind my back." "I had a consultation," he said quietly. "Just to understand my options." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Your options?" For the first time in weeks, he really looked at me. His eyes were tired, sad in a way that made my chest ache. "I can't stop thinking about it. About you having feelings for him. I told you, I know what you told me." His voice wasn't angry, which somehow made it worse. "You told me you had a crush. But Sarah, I saw you during that investigation. I saw how scared you were of losing your job over him. People don't get that scared over a simple crush." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but the words died in my throat. Because he wasn't wrong. What I'd felt for Marcus had been more than a crush, and we both knew it. "So you went to a divorce lawyer?" "I went to understand what our lives would look like if we can't get past this." He rubbed his face with both hands. The lawyer said that with no kids and our separate career paths, it would be pretty straightforward. We'd each keep our own retirement accounts, split the house proceeds, go our separate ways. Is that what you want? I whispered. I don't know. His honesty cut deeper than anger would have. I love you. I've loved you since we were kids, but I keep thinking, if you could develop feelings that strong for someone else while being happily married to me, what does that say about us? About what I mean to you? I started crying then, ugly sobs that I couldn't control. It doesn't say anything about us. It was just what? Just chemistry? Just attraction? He leaned forward, and for the first time in weeks, his voice had real emotion in it. Sarah, you spent months trying to shake feelings for this guy. You avoided floors, changed your lunch schedule, couldn't concentrate at work. That's not nothing. He was right, and I hated him for being right. The worst part, he continued, is that I can see it in your eyes sometimes. When you think I'm not looking. You're still thinking about him. My breath caught. That's not, yes, it is. His voice was gentle but firm. Even after everything he did to you, part of you is still drawn to him, and I can't live with being the safe choice while you fantasize about the dangerous one. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I asked, what happens now? I don't know, he said. The lawyer said we should try counseling first. See if we can work through it. And if we can't? He looked at me with those eyes I'd been falling into since high school. Then I guess we'll know we tried everything. That was a week ago. We've been sleeping in separate bedrooms since then, his suggestion, not mine. Yesterday, I made an appointment with a marriage counselor for next Friday. But I'm terrified it's too late. Because here's what I can't tell him, what I can barely admit to myself, he's right about the lingering attraction. Even knowing what Marcus is, even being disgusted by his manipulative behavior, there's still some part of my brain that lights up when I think about him. Not romantically, I'm not that delusional, but there's something about the intensity of what I felt that I can't seem to let go of. And my husband, who knows me better than anyone, can see it. Last night, I lay in our guest bedroom staring at the ceiling, wondering how a stupid workplace crush had led me here. My marriage, my partnership with my best friend, my safe harbor for 8 years, might not survive my inability to control my own heart. The really sick irony? Marcus got exactly what he wanted after all. He couldn't have me, so he destroyed my marriage instead. Even from whatever hole he's crawled into, he's still winning. I have 6 days until our counseling appointment. 6 days to figure out how to save the most important relationship of my life. But I'm not sure wanting to save it is enough when the person you need to save it from is yourself.